Hi, my name is Jared Nielsen. I recently completed my PhD in neuroscience at the University of Utah. In this short clip, I'm going to describe some of the background to the left brain, right brain hypothesis. I'll also describe some of the results from our recent paper that addresses the left brain, right brain hypothesis using functional neuroimaging. Let's start with the background. There is the idea among the general public that personality types arise from differences in brain activity between the left and right side. For example, someone who is logical or methodical in their cognitive style may be said to use the left hemisphere of their brain more, and someone who is creative, artistic, or free-spirited may be said to use the right hemisphere more. These ideas are inspired by very good brain research that dates back to studies conducted more than 150 years ago. In particular, three physicians, Mark Dax, and more famously Paul Broca and Colonel Wernicke, discovered that language processing occurs in the left hemisphere or left side of the brain. More recently, Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga studied split brain patients. These patients were epilepsy patients who had a neurosurgical procedure to cut the connections between the brain's hemispheres to keep seizures from spreading. Clever experiments found that one could present stimuli to different sides of the brain and discovered that the hemispheres have many different functions. Roger Sperry received the Nobel Prize for this work in 1981. From these experiments and many others, we know that indeed the left and right hemispheres have many different functions. In the overwhelming majority of individuals, the left side processes language, and the right side is responsible for paying attention to the outside world. In our study, we took advantage of a movement that's been going on in the neuroscience community to collect large-scale data sets and make them publicly available. Scientists all over the world have been contributing anonymized brain scans to these large public databases. It is now possible to look at over 1,000 brain scans, which we did. This is something that was all but impossible just 5 years ago. The main question of our study was how left-sided and right-sided brain networks differ among individuals. We identified specific brain regions that form the backbone of left and right-sided networks, or groups of brain regions that work together more on one side of the brain than the other. Then we asked, is it true that some individuals tend to have a strong network on one side and other individuals tend to have a stronger network on the other side? When we looked at the data across the more than 1,000 individuals, we didn't find overall stronger networks on either side of the brain. Rather, it seemed that for each individual, there are a handful of connections that are particularly strong or synchronized, but that these connections are scattered over both hemispheres. In other words, which connections are particularly strong seems to vary connection by connection, not hemisphere by hemisphere. It's not a global property of the brain that one side appears to be dominant from individual to individual. When one connection is strong in one hemisphere, it has no relationship to whether other connections are strong in the same hemisphere. It's become so widely accepted in our culture that left brain and right brain dominance are valid concepts underlying personality. There are online quizzes that tell you whether you are left-brained or right-brained. There are also apps you can download to strengthen one side of your brain. It creeps into textbooks on learning styles. There are team-building exercises at workshops people pay for to balance the brain or strengthen one side or find which side you are. None of these have been proposed by the neuroscience community. Although it's very true the left and right side do different things, it doesn't look like personality differences are likely to have anything to do with one hemisphere being stronger, dominant, more connected, or more synchronized. In our study, we tested the left brain, right brain hypothesis, but there are many reasons why the neuroscience community has never really accepted the idea of left or right hemisphere dominance as a basis for personality types. It would be inefficient to have one hemisphere of our brains consistently underactive. Lesion and neurosurgical studies do not support a simplistic view of personality types arising from brain function on one side. And the stereotypes of left and right dominant personalities get many details wrong about which functions are actually lateralized to the left or right. To be clear, we don't want to disparage the personality types associated with the so-called right brain person or left brain person. We all know individuals who are logical and analytical and others who are creative, intuitive, and free spirits. However, our study does not support the idea that a more dominant left or right hemisphere is the underlying neural basis of these personality types. That said, This research is exciting because we believe there is an underlying neural basis to personality types, even if it is not right or left hemisphere dominance. And the race is on to discover what the neural basis of personality types is. Finally, this research is also of interest to us because the functions that are lateralized or specialized to each hemisphere can differ in diseases like autism, Down syndrome, and schizophrenia. We are searching for brain markers that can help us in diagnosing conditions and in determining whether our treatments are working. Thank you for your time and for your interest in our research.